So today's lesson is on how to find the equation of a parabola in vertex form. Okay, so vertex form, we need the h and k value, which tells us the vertex, and we need the a value, which comes from the step pattern. If you're given a nice graph, you can sometimes figure out both of those just through observation. So if I look at my graph right over here, my vertex is 2 and negative 4. That gives me my h value of 2 and my k value of negative 4, which is great. The a I can find using the step pattern. So if I go to my vertex and move to the right one, to get to my next point, I move up 3 units. That initial step is your a value, because if the original step pattern is 1, 3, 5, when I multiply a by 1, it's a. So if the original step is, or if the first step in my parabola is 3, then a must be 3 as well. Now I have everything I need. A is 3. I put my x minus the h value, so x minus 2. Don't forget that squared or else it's not a parabola. And then minus k for the k value. And now I can just verify. Looking at this equation, I know my vertex should be 2, negative 4. It is. My step pattern should start with 3, which it does. Great. So let's go to the next one. My vertex in this case is located at 5, 0. So I have an h of 5, a k of 0, and my a value, when I move to the right one, it looks like I'm just going up by 0.5. To verify that, I know when a is 0.5, the next step is 1.5. And if I take another step, that is 1.5. So the a value is going to be 0.5. And now it's all about plugging it into the formula. A is 0.5. Then I do x minus the h value, so x minus 5, all squared. If I want to write plus 0, I can. If I just want to keep it a little more simplified, that works as well too. And the second one is the one I would prefer. But adding the 0 just to visualize it, not a big deal, not a problem at all. Okay. Okay, I want you to try C on your own. So identify the vertex, identify the a value, and then take it up when you finish. Okay, so your vertex was at negative 1, 5. And the a value should have been negative 2 because it's opening down. And that first step is going down 2 units. So y equals negative 2x plus 1 squared plus 5. Be careful inside the bracket here. You're always flipping the sign of the x coordinate because it's technically x minus negative 1, which turns it into that positive value. If we look at this next example, I can see where my vertex is located. It's quite visible. It is at 3, negative 4. But if I try to find that a value, moving to the right one and up, that's really hard to estimate. I can't tell. Maybe that's 0.3, maybe that's 0.4. I have no idea. Okay, when the a value is not visible, we want to find another point. So in this case, I can clearly see, mainly because it's identified, but either way, I can clearly see I have a point at 8, 1. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, that vertex represents an h and a k value, so I'm going to plug that into my equation. Y equals a, x minus 3 squared, minus 4. I don't know a, so I can't put anything in its place. But this extra point that I just found, well, that represents an x and a y value. When x is equal to 8, y is equal to 1 in this quadratic expression equation. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to replace the x value with the 8 and the y value with the 1. So 1 equals a bracket 8 minus 3 squared minus 4. And now we just have one variable left, the a, and I can isolate for that. I'm just going to solve for a. Please be careful here. There are lots of common mistakes that I see. To avoid any mistakes, bring this negative 4 that is not attached to the bracket in any way to the other side. And when I do that, the negative 4 becomes positive 4. while I do that, I'm going to simplify inside my bracket. 8 minus 3 is 5, and then that goes to the power of 2. Now 1 plus 4, that's 5, and 5 squared is 25. And I just like to put that in front of the a. And now, just like in grade 9, to isolate for a, we're going to divide both sides by 25. So that a is equal to 5 over 25, or if we simplify our fraction, that's just 1 over 5. I found my a value, that's great. There's no way I would have predicted that it was a fifth. So that's why we need this extra method. So my equation is y equals 1 over 5, x minus 3 squared minus 4. And that's it. There are also scenarios where you're not given a graph at all, and you have to rely on the vertex and the other point. So here, the vertex is 4, negative 2, so that's my h, and that's my k, and I have another point which is going to represent my x and y. I like to start by just plugging in the vertex first. So x minus 4 squared minus 2, again, don't forget the exponent. And now I'm going to plug in my point, so 1 for y, 7 for x, and now I start simplifying. Again, bring the negative 2 over. It's going to become 1 plus 2 now. 7 minus 4 simplifies to 3. Don't forget to square it. And now we simplify a little bit. 3 squared is 9. So I'm left with 3 equals 9a. Our final step, divide out the 9, and 3 over 9 simplifies to a third. So our a value is a third, which means our parabola has a compression by a factor of a third. Don't forget, after you do all this work, to write your final equation. Okay, so y equals 1 over 3, x minus 4 squared minus 2. Okay, let's do one more together. So again, my vertex h is 2, k is 0, and my point x is 0, y is negative 2. I'm going to start with the vertex. Y equals a x minus 2 squared plus 0. That plus 0, I'm really not going to write it anymore. I put it there as a visual, but it really doesn't have to be there at all. So the y value is negative 2. The x value is 0. And like I said, I'm not going to put the plus 0. So I'm just going to simplify inside my bracket. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Please, please remember, when you raise a negative number or a positive number to the power of 2, it's positive always. And if you need to put it into your calculator, use the brackets. So here, negative 2 squared is positive 4. Okay? And now I can divide both sides by 4. And I get an a value, once simplified, to be negative a half, which means our parabola is opening down because it's been reflected, and it's also been compressed by a factor of a half. So that your final equation, y equals negative 1 over 2, x minus 2 squared. I'm not adding the plus 0. All right, the last page, these 4 questions, I want you to try them on your own. Okay, so make sure you're actually pausing the video. The answer is written at the bottom, so if you get it right, you don't have to check with me, but if you get it wrong, come back to the video and see where you went wrong. Okay, so pause the video, try your best, be careful with the signs, put the vertex in for h and k, put the point in for x and y, and then just isolate for that a value. Okay, so pause and take it up as needed. Okay, so for this first one, I put 0 in for h, and negative 3 in for k, and then 1 in for x, negative 4 in for y. Now, when I simplify, I made sure to bring the negative 3 to the other side to turn it positive. And when I simplified 1 minus 0, that was just 1, which was really convenient because 1 squared is still 1, so the a is isolated for automatically, and I got negative 1. Now, for your final answer, you do not need to put this x minus 1, and honestly, for proper form, you really shouldn't, because anything minus 0 is itself, so I just kept it as negative x squared minus 3. If you want to put negative 1x squared minus 3, that's fine, but again, a coefficient of 1 or negative 1 does not need to be shown. So again, go to the next one, pause the video, If you made mistakes, identify where you made the mistake. Did you plug stuff in incorrectly? Did you isolate for A incorrectly? Make a note of it and really pay attention to it when you get to the second example. Okay, so once you put the -3 and the -4 in for h and k, be careful with your bracket. Make sure you have x plus 3 because of the opposite sign. Okay, and when I put -2 in for x and 1 in for y, I bring the -4 over, and again, it becomes positive. And then -2 plus 3 is 1, which again, makes life easier. Okay, so your final answer should have been y equals 5, x plus 3 squared minus 4. The most common mistake, I think, would be right over here. You accidentally put x minus 3 instead of x plus 3. If you got it right, that's awesome. Go to the next one. If you didn't, again, highlight your mistake, make the correction, make a note of it somewhere so that you know when you're studying that that's a common mistake you've made. Okay, so for the third one, again, just like the previous one, make sure you're flipping the sign for h so that you have x plus 4, not x minus 4. When you put 0 in for x and y, it might make things a little more convenient. Another common mistake, make sure when you bring the 8 over, it becomes minus. When I squared the 4, I get 16, and your a value, once simplified, should have been -1/2. To get this as your final answer, y equals -1/2, x plus 4 squared plus 8. Okay, last one, make it count. Put the vertex in for h and k, the point in for x and y. Isolate wonderfully, and hopefully it all works out. Okay, so you should have had y equals 1/4, x minus 5 squared plus 1. Okay, you plugged everything in for h, k, x, y. When the 1 came over, it became -1 to get 4. -4 squared should have been positive 16. So if you put -16, star this question right, put brackets in calculator, or a negative squared is always positive. Okay, and when we simplified 4 over 16, that gave us 1/4. Okay, so that's it for finding the equation of a parabola. It can come from a graph, and if you can see the a value, that's awesome, makes life easier. If not, you're going to have to use the vertex and another point to plug those in and then isolate for the a value.